advantage of the strong. So again, Kepler's definition is telling the truth and giving back what is owed. Polemarchus is doing good to friends and harm to enemies. Thrasymachus is essentially the advantage of the strong. Each one of these definitions has a insufficiency. And Socrates is able to poke holes in all three of these definitions during the course of the dialogue. The first one, the telling the truth and giving what is owed, he doesn't poke a lot of holes in it, but I'm going to. One of the most insufficient elements of this, right away, is telling the truth. What is truth? Pontius Pilate, one of those great characters of literature, says this $60 million question: what is truth? Do we know what truth is? How do we define truth? Do we even understand what we're talking about when we say truth? If we don't, then justice can't be telling the truth because we don't know what truth is. Notice, however, that telling the truth involves understanding the truth. And understanding the truth is part of what the head is supposed to do. Intellect is supposed to search out what the truth is. And therefore telling the truth should come as a result. The problem is we don't know what the truth is all the time. Unless we understand what the truth is. How can we tell the truth? It's also insufficient in giving what is owed. Perhaps to other human beings, giving what is owed is not that difficult. But notice here there's a little subtle irony that Plato is bringing up. The Father is saying, giving back what is owed. He means to the gods. But in Greek society, like in Roman society later on, what is owed by son to father is tremendous. In Roman society, a father could legally kill his son up until a certain age. No legal ramifications at all. It was said that the son owes so much to a father that basically the father could do with his son what he wished to do. In Greek society, sons weren't allowed to inherit land until the father basically allowed them to. There's a great story, I think, of Sophocles, who at the age of something like 80 or 90 years old, still would not let his sons, who were 60 by that time, inherit land. And his sons took their father, Sophocles, to court to prove that he was senile. And they sued the father to prove he was senile because they couldn't get their land, poor guys. And Sophocles came into court, of course, and you defended yourself in court. There were no lawyers, or not many lawyers in Athens at the time. And Sophocles comes out and he recites the entirety of his most recently written play. And the judge and jury find him obviously in full capacity of his wits. He lived another 10 years, and his sons only got to inherit at the ripe age of 70 when Sophocles kicked the bucket. The illustration is that son to father owes a great debt and can't really pay it back. So much so that patricide, killing of the father, was a deadly, deadly, deadly thing to do. You did not do that. That was one of the rules of nature you did not break. Oedipus, for instance, killing his father in Sophocles' great play. Big deal, okay? It was huge. Consequently, if you're going to give back what's owed as a son to your father, how do you do that? How do you give back to your father everything that you owe? And even as Kepler is giving back to the gods, that's a difficult thing. It's insufficient because how do you give back to the gods what you owe? If the gods gave us life, the gods gave us all the material possessions we have, how do we give back enough to satisfy what the gods have given to us? It's not possible. Consequently, this definition of justice ends up being insufficient. Moreover, it's rather dangerous, as Socrates points out. If, for instance, we make a maxim of telling the truth all the time, we will do minor damage or great damage to people. Minor damage, for instance, if you come into work and say, "Hey, Sally, you're fat," that would be painful. Cause damage to her, probably cause damage to us when Sally got up and slugged us in the face. It would cause great disruption in society. More to the point, if it were like that situation, if you were hiding somebody, the classic case of hiding a Jew from the Nazis. And the Nazis came in and said, here's the Jews over here. You're telling the truth, but notice you're telling the truth to get somebody else killed. So in the case of insufficient, this definition is insufficient. In the case of dangerous, it's extremely dangerous. Telling the truth is a dangerous proposition. While Polemarchus, who takes it out of giving to each and then doing good to friends and harm to enemies, this is insufficient, as Socrates points out, because how do you know who your friends are versus how do you know who your enemies are? If your friends, that is those you chum around with, are bad men, and you give good to those people, aren't you doing good to bad men? So that justice would be doing good to bad people and harm to good people? Or, for instance, if our enemies are to be made just, should we do good to them? How does harm make people better? Socrates says that if you do harm to others, you just make them worse. Shouldn't we do good to them? The just man does good to everybody. So this is insufficient as a definition. Because basically, if justice is doing good to friends and harm to enemies, we not only have a confusion as to who our friends are, but we end up calling justice a form of doing harm and corrupting other people. That's definitely insufficient. Moreover, it's dangerous, because if we only do good to our friends, harm to our enemies, how do we ever escape from the clannishness into which the human race falls as a tendency? My blood versus your blood. How do we get out of that? The classic William Faulkner problem, right? If we call justice this alone, we cannot escape from the clannishness which binds us to those of our own blood and keeps us separate from people in the neighborhood next door to us. Lastly is the rash warrior, and he suggests that it's advantage of the strong. Socrates points out that this is insufficient because the strong don't always know what's to their advantage. So frequently they make laws, and those laws are actually to their own detriment. Frequently they try to do justice or define justice as they want. That justice comes back to hurt them. It would be better, he says, for the strong to submit to others, and then they become the weak, because if they submit judgment and the like to other people, or accept the counsel of others, they are weaker. So they aren't as strong anymore, but that would be better for them. So this is insufficient as a definition of justice too, because the advantage of the strong is that the strong make themselves weak.